welcome back to another video. I know it's been a while, but hey, we are back doing more lore videos about the separate regions and nations and locations all across Eorzea and beyond. So today we are actually going to continue where we left off. If you remember from my last lore video, we actually covered kind of a brief summary, or I guess lore history about Ul'dah. So now we're going to be covering some of the areas around Ul'dah. Most especially, we're going to be focusing on Thanalan. So Thanalan is actually separated into 5 different areas, or 5 different zones. And so we're going to be focusing at least 2 per video, except for this first one where we're going to be covering Western Thanalan as well as the Goblet, which is the residential area. So moving on, let's continue with starting off in Western Thanalan. Western Thanalan serves as Ul'dah's ocean gateway, an establishment devoted to trade and can be found throughout from docks to markets to well-trodden roads. On a clear day, following a good rain from the clearing of the skies of the desert dust from the coast of this rocky region, one might even spy Vildebrand across the Rotano Sea. So in this area, it's one of the more common areas, I guess, adventurers go. It's really one of the first locations outside of Ul'dah that you get to visit. One of 2. It's both Western and Central Thanalan are the main areas that you first start off with if you do choose to start your journey in Ul'dah. So let's continue on with some of the more well-known places or landmarks that we have here in Western Thanalan. So the first one is actually just outside the city gates, where we have the 80 Sins of Sanomo. So this all began about 200 years ago, where Princess Sanomo, the second daughter of her house, plotted to steal the throne from the rightful heir. Isn't that how it always seems to work? Her conspiracy was found out just before she can act, and she was later arrested. Charged with high treason, she was made to walk the 80 steps just outside the city gates 80 times a day for 80 straight days. Wow, that's a workout right there. And with the final stride of her penance, she reached her last step and fell to the ground dead. Wow, that's harsh. Just like right at the end of your punishment, you just keel over and die. So after doing the calculations, that's about 6,400 steps she had to do over that entire course. So I get tired just going up and down my stairs to my apartment, so I can understand why she would suddenly just collapse like that. That is a terrible punishment. But moving on to the area here in Hammerley. So this particular area is an influx of refugees. The living conditions of Ul'dah no longer suit the taste of the wealthiest inhabitants, and Hammerley is their escape. It's an area upon which these great estates will one day be built. At present, mighty towers known as the Hammers pound the ground into solid foundations and give the place its name. So I'm sure that you actually see like these giant moving pumps or drills actually being hammered into the ground. What they're actually doing is preparing the foundation for future buildings. So all of these were built up, and because of the desert sands, it's very, very soft, so they can't really build anything upon it. So they have to harden the land around them just long enough so that it actually has a solid foundation where they can build up new homes and buildings later on in the future. So in this area, we actually have 3 specific landmarks. The first one is known as the Scorpion Crossing. From the East Aldenard Trading Company to the independent merchants of the 77 caravans, shopkeepers of all kinds and send their wares through the Scorpion Cross. Here, goods unloaded at Vesper Bay are sorted by quality, and the best are sent on to Ul'dah, while the remaining are sent to the Silver Bazaar. Speaking of the Silver Bazaar was once the heart of Ul'dah's sea trade. However, very few vessels actually port their docks at the hamlet's lonely docks anymore. Instead, they choose to sail for the deeper harbors of Vesper Bay. Of late, the town is a refuge for those who saw their dreams shattered in Ul'dah and are trying in desperation to pick up the pieces. So we actually had a few quests about this specific location, especially if you are still starting off in Ul'dah, and it was once the most prosperous part of Ul'dah, at least in the early days. However, because people are being drawn more to Vesper Bay, not really much of it's going to the Silver Bazaar, and since they only get the leftovers from Vesper Bay, most people don't bother coming here anymore. So at this point, it's really more of a small fishing village that's kind of struggling to get by, though word has it that they are slowly starting to pick up. And finally, in this area, we have what's known as the Beacon Hill Lighthouse. In times long past, the merchants of the Silver Bazaar would light a great bonfire on a hill adjacent with the hamlet in order to see ships safely into port. At the height of the bazaar's prosperity, money was donated by shopkeepers and ship captains alike towards the construction of a mighty lighthouse that stands atop that same hill. So again, also connected with the Silver Bazaar and how prosperous it once was. They actually built this entire lighthouse solely for the purpose of helping guide more ships into the bay. However, after the lighthouse was built, it seemed that was when the Silver Bazaar really started to decline in its prosperity. Okay, moving on to Noficus Wells. So this here, I'm sure that a lot of people have noticed when they're passing through the area. You see like this great deep canyon. So I'm sure this is actually a place that a lot of people have noticed. It's kind of hard not to notice because between the two halves of the western Thanalan, there's a deep gorge. And when you look down into it, you see like this little flowing river, and this is known as Noficus Wells. So, nestled between Hammerley and Horizon's Edge, Noficus Wells is a natural basin created by the recent cave-in of a massive network of underground caverns. As a rare source of water in the deserts of Thanalan, the area is lush and verdant, as if blessed by Nofica, the goddess of abundance. So, it's really more like the goddess of the harvest, and because this place is like a mini oasis in the middle of the desert, that's where it got its name. So it's really because of all the mines that have been built deep below the ground here in Ul'dah. It is a mining nation, of course, so that's where most of the jewels and gold comes from. And I guess there were just so many tunnels that were built directly underneath here that eventually, when it all caved in, that's what created this giant gorge. Of course, there are ways of both getting in and out. They did construct the scaffolding, and perhaps the easiest way, though, is simply to take the bridge across, so you don't really need to worry about that. Just keep your eyes out if you end up coming in this area. Okay, so that's everything on the first half of Western Thanalan, which of course is again called Hammerley. The second half here is known as Horizon's Edge. It is said that one can see all the way to the very edge of the horizon from atop the rocky cliffs that line this otherwise arid wasteland. So we actually have two locations on this side of the gorge, which are known as Copperbell Mines and the Horizon. So let's start off with Copperbell Mines. This here is actually a location of one of the first 3 dungeons that we unlock in the game. So, abandoned once purged of ore, Copperbell Mines laid untouched for nearly 3 centuries until Amija & Sons mineral concern reclaimed the shafts, their sights set on expanding the mines downward to tap yet into undiscovered veins of valuable metal. However, the miners delved too deep and an army of raging giants came pouring forth from the darkness recesses of the mine. These were the Hecatonaries, thralls of the Thorn Dynasty, who had been sealed in a lightless prison for rebelling against their masters. So, basic story with the giants here. They were once considered to be slaves under Ul'dah when the Thorn Dynasty was still pretty much prosperous, I guess. And eventually there was a rebellion, and after seeing how strong that the giants really were, they were imprisoned underground and pretty much left to die. The problem, though, is that the Hecatonaries, they live longer than people can remember something. So 300 years seems to be very little to them, but the people seem to have completely forgotten the fact that, oh right, there are giants buried underneath the ground here. So that's kind of where the whole problem starts. So you can't really blame them for being angry and going on a rampage at first. Alright, so looking back to the other side of Horizon's Edge, we have Horizon. So along the Royal Allegan Sunway that connects Vesper Bay to Ul'dah, Horizon is home to the Brass Blades encampment, there to ensure travelers and traders may pass safely between the harbors of Vesper Bay and Ul'dah proper. One can catch the first glimpse of dawn through the Sunrise Gate to the east and watch dusk fall through Sunset Gate to the west. So it's actually a very beautiful name if you actually think about it with the gates alone. So this here is actually just a little area where a lot of traders can actually stop and rest on their way to Ul'dah. It's a safe place, it's surrounded by a lot of guards, we have traders all over. It's kind of like a meeting place for a lot of traders and salesmen and merchants and even just regular adventurers who are free to just stop here, rest, get to know one another, maybe come up with some kind of bargains or deals with each other. It really is a nice little location before moving on to the next area. So that's everything on this part of Western Thanalan. So we're actually going to be moving up a little bit more to the north, known as the Footfalls. So in the Footfalls, though separated by less than a mom, the Footfalls sit much lower than neighboring Horizon Edge. A common bedtime tale is that an ancient race of angry giants trample through the lands down in their journeys from the north to the volcanoes of Vildebrand. Well, that's an interesting story because there's no giants on Vildebrand that I'm aware of. I mean, aside from the Goobos, but I really don't think that that's the same thing, unless they really are talking about Goobos. So this is an area, like, if you connect it downwards to, like, this giant's long tunnel, which I think was once used for the miners, we have the Footfall Hills. So it's actually another almost mini oasis, I guess you could call it. So we actually have 5 different areas here, or rather 5 different landmarks that we should focus on. The first is known as the Silent King. Thought to be a relic of Beladia, the Silent King is the upper half of a colossal statue revealed for the first time in centuries following the recent collapse of the sinkhole. At present, the Order of Nalthal has dispatched thaumaturgists to learn more of its mysteries. Unfortunately, many of the other ruins revealed in the collapse have since been removed by local families for use in the reconstruction of buildings destroyed in the calamity. So, once again, that's the thing with Udons. So, like, they take whatever they want and just use it for their own purposes, even if it means just taking apart ancient ruins and building up their houses with it. So there's really not too much more about the ruins in this particular area, because again, most of them were taken apart and just used for building materials. The statue of the Silent King is really the only piece that we can actually see anymore, and you actually see the thaumaturgists that were mentioned scattered here and there. We have scholars looking into it, just doing study and research, trying to see what they can learn about the statue in the way that people lived so many years ago. Next up, we have Crescent Cove. Shaped like the waning crescent moon, this cove is home to a small, forlorn fishing village. Its inhabitants have grown increasingly despondent since the calamity, the altered flow of currents in nearby seas rendering the once rich fishing grounds barren. So that sucks, because this is just another small fishing village, nothing too special, but after the calamity, because of the change in the currents and the landscape and everything, and I'm guessing like with these giant sinkholes happening all over, they can't really use the land anymore. The land is just completely barren to them, so they kind of have nowhere else to go. They are kind of stuck here for the time being, relying solely on fish from the sea. But even then, it doesn't look like things are particularly kind here. It's a rough way of life in this particular part of the world. However, if you move up a little more to the north, you come across Vesper Bay, which, despite everything going on around it, is actually thriving. A bustling port city strategically situated in the western coast of Thanalan and maintained using funds generously provided by the Syndicate Chairman Lolorito. Vesper Bay serves as a gateway in and out of the Sultanate-controlled lands. The Colossus bronze statue in the main plaza is said to be the exact likeness of said chairman, when viewed from afar. So you really gotta love this guy's vanity. He just loves himself so much he builds a statue of bronze, I'm surprised it's not gold, right there in the middle of this settlement. Basically he's telling people, I own this place, and he has no problems letting everyone who comes here know it. So this area is actually, I'm sure you are very, very familiar with this area, because this little hamlet was actually one of the former headquarters for the Scions of the Seventh Dawn. And of course, Minfilia had many, many people coming all the time, and many quests coming and going, and it often got very, very annoying because you have to be able to come through here from either Horizon or through Limsa by boat. I personally recommend that you come from Limsa. It's often a lot easier and a lot quicker to get it here through that way. Of course, all that's left here is kind of the empty storehouse where the Scions once stood, and both good memories and bad memories, I suppose, continue to live on through here. Okay, so we have two more places. This here is known as Paratus Peace. Legend has it that the monster known as the Paratus, Terror of the Straits, was finally slain in the secluded valley after generations of terrorizing nearby fishing villages, demanding virgin sacrifices. With the area's earth aspected weakened, Paratus Peace is now shrouded with clouds of caustic gas, which the superstitious locals blame on some curse uttered by the Parata in its final moments. So you don't really have too many reasons to come to this particular place, but when you do set foot here, you do see like this ominous gas is kind of hanging around here, and according to the people, this is actually like cursed land. Like apparently some kind of monster ended up terrorizing these lands, demanding like a giant food source basically, though why they specifically stated virgin sacrifices I can't really say. I mean, look into that what you will. But yeah, this was also the area where that said beast was destroyed. So if you're looking for a place where people tend to avoid like the plague, you could do worse places than here. But connected to this place is known as Moondrip. The waters within this cavern glow with a weak light, as if they have somehow trapped the moon's radiance. While some mountebanks claim that this makes the liquid a potent curative and sell vials for it for no less than a small fortune, scholars deny its mystical properties, claiming the water's luminancy is a result of thousands of tiny fauna. So yeah, that's interesting. I think that you end up coming here during the Thaumaturge questline at one point, but yeah, who would have thought this collecting water from this place would actually help you earn a lot of money? I mean, I wish we could really do that, but so yeah, people actually believe water from this place is actually a powerful cure when you get past the lumbering giants that are kind of making this place their home. So maybe the idea of it being a powerful cure at the very least might not be so accurate. And finally, we've come to the last area of this particular place here in Western Thanalan. We have Cape Westwind. This area takes its name from a westerly wind that blows from the seas. Few souls now venture anywhere near the cape for fear of the Imperial Army, which occupied the area soon after the calamity. This is another area that we've actually been to a couple times before, as well as had a few battles, or I guess really one major battle, which is known as Cape Westwind. So here we have the Imperial Outpost. This makeshift encampment connects Castra Marinum, a floating man-made island tasked with resupplying Garlean legions, to Imperial units stationed on the mainland by means of a large Magitech transporter. So this place is really more for Garlean use, and you really don't have too many reasons to want to come here, at least not until after you end up beating the main scenario for a Realm Reborn. After that, it pretty much is forgotten about, unless you are a fan of fishing, because this is actually a popular fishing spot for certain rare fish that you're looking for. Anyway, that's pretty much everything that we need to know about the Western Thanalan. All the areas and landmarks that we have here in this region, good to go. So, moving on to one last area we're going to be talking about just for today, we have the Goblet. So the Goblet is the player housing area of Ul'dah. You can actually enter it here through the Western Thanalan. So although players can freely travel to the Goblet by foot from Western Thanalan, you need to complete the quest Where the Heart Is, the Goblet, before you're able to go ahead and go into this area. So once you complete this quest, it will allow players to teleport into the area through the Ether Knights in Ul'dah. You can also access the area by talking to the Ivory Sparrow in Ul'dah, who's on the steps of Thald, right near the Miners Guild. So this here is a basic look of the Goblet. This is a place where adventurers can buy their own separate plots of land, build their houses, have free companies, and basically do what they want. It's a mini oasis. It almost feels like a spa when you come here to visit. So not too many places are open right now, I'm afraid. I think that the Goblet is the second most popular area, at least it was when it was just the three. But I'm guessing that this is probably number 3. So this is going to be a massive area made with these beautiful stone walls. You see like a giant pool in the middle where you can actually jump in and go swimming. And if you're not able to get yourself a house or maybe a free company and join one of their houses, there is always the Sultana's Breath, which is the apartment building in the Goblet. So you can actually go here and see if they have any openings. I do think openings come and go, so you really have to keep an eye on things. Plots and apartments do not last long. They open and close very, very quickly. We also have other shops and services scattered about here and each one of these particular areas. And there is rumor going around that they are going to be adding more plots and other figures later on in the future expansions. But yeah, I think that's going to be just about it for right now. So that's going to be part 1 of our videos about Thanalan. And so we are making good progress. We're going to be having 3 videos all together about the surrounding lands of Thanalan. And in the next video, we are going to be talking about Central Thanalan, and I'm thinking maybe Eastern Thanalan as well, which would leave both Northern and Southern Thanalan for the final video before we move on to the story of Gridania. So I hope that everyone enjoyed this video, and if you have any other questions or ideas about which places I should do after we complete the 3 main areas of Limsa, Ul'dah, and Gridania, please drop a message down below. I always get so happy whenever I see a comment. But yeah, if you like this video, please like and subscribe down below. And until next time, everyone, take care, and I hope to be able to get the next one out sometime next week. So until then, take care.